You're listening to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club.
Greetings, and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. I saw that.
So close.
I'm joined this evening by our Canadian friends, Chris and Ray Andrew, and by Jennifer Hetzel. How are y'all doing?
Excellent.
Cold. 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 It's cold here.
Yeah, it's
Not
kind of
like
cool.
Canada standards, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
cold.
as cold as it is here.
I know it is.
Yeah. We're in Central Texas. We're actually getting a preview of the winter that we're probably not going to have.
Hashtag global warming.
Yeah. So anything interesting happened to anyone since the last time we convened?
I have been on for a very long time, so yes, but I won't get into it because there's a ton to talk about.
Last night was his last night shift.
For the year at the
nice.
It's done.
Yes.
Excellent.
So it's gonna
Very
take
happy.
it's gonna take you a while to
Oh yeah.
come back to the land of the living.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Beard's looking good though.
What's that? Oh yeah, it's coming in pretty good.
So
Trimmed it there the other day just to.
I love the beard.
So my problem is mine grows in pretty good, but I'm very calico, so I've got all this light parts, and it just
He's got every single color in there.
Yeah,
it's
there's like
red,
red
and
and-
gray and
yeah.
blonde and
I've got blonde and
like-
brown and gray and white, and
Lots
I've
of
got
gray.
this one stripe here I really like. But anyway, so
he says this is from Logan.
Yeah.
All of his
My white chin beards are from Logan.
from Logan.
there you go.
She calls them.
Oh, thanks, Cy. Hi, pretty people, and Eugene.
Love you too.
It's okay. I was giving him crap about a video that he put up today, I think, congratulating Xbox people for, he's like, the wait's over. Y'all kind of had crap the last couple of years, but, now the system's come out and it's got a lot of power and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, of course you're congratulating these people. You know all about sticking with something during the dark times. You're a Cowboys fan. So, anyway, just a quick update on myself. Since we last convened, the site has been kind of sparse, and the reason for that is I've been busy. A couple weeks ago, I got a phone call. This was right before Halloween. I got a phone call. Thought it was my dad. Turned out to be a work mate of his, and basically. To try to put it in a nutshell, my dad had a massive asthma attack. He was taken to the hospital, and there he along with apparently pneumonia that he's battling, his heart stopped. Luckily, he was in the ER at the time, so they immediately started doing CPR, so he probably did not lose circulation at all. But that being said, his heart stopped for 5 to 10 minutes. My brother and I immediately jumped in the car, went down there, and he's had a close friend that's been, keeping track of him the last, over this time or whatever. Since then, brain activity is fine. He's had the ventilator tube removed. He's just on oxygen now, on and off. But they're looking to move him into a somewhat private room now. So things are definitely looking up. We're recording this on a Wednesday. This Saturday, my wife and I are going to go down and visit him. And like I said, things are definitely looking up. But there was a period of time here where it was really kind of touch and go. In fact, he was told, the doctors flat out told him, had you not been in the places that you're at, any place where someone could call 911 for you, number one, and number two, at a hospital, when your heart stopped, you probably would not have walked away from this. So, we're very mindful of the fact that this was a very serious situation, and he got very lucky, to be very honest with you. So, so that being said, that's why the site's kind of been a little sparse, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that tomorrow evening. So, So that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our book for the evening. Tonight's book is We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor. Ray, you're the one that recommended this book to the group.
Yeah, and you can thank Sean because he recommended.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, Sean. The Sean. Sorry, it was.
Oh God! Don't give him that.
Nice.
So yeah, Sean. I caught him reading it, and he's like, "No, dude, you gotta." He tried to explain it to me, and he explained it to me the same way that I tried to explain it to other people, which is, long story short, that a guy gets put into a computer program, and he is a computer program that runs a satellite and has to explore the universe, and it's amazing, and yeah. So,
and that description totally is just doesn't even begin to scratch the surface.
No, it doesn't, because you don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, you don't want to give anything away, but you also want to give people enough hooks that it's like,
So anyway, so what sold me on it was when Sean told me that he was listening to it in the car, and he said the guy that reads it does such a great job with making sure that you can keep track of each person. And so anyway, yeah, that's so thank you, Sean, for this.
Yes, thank you, Sean. This is relatively a new book. It just came out last year, and it won lots of awards, and I completely understand why. What's interesting is we were talking a little bit before the show. The book is actually part of a trilogy, and all 3 books have come out, thank goodness, because I read this book. I say read, of course, listen to. I read this book within probably a day and a half, and was just like dying. Like, I have to finished these books. Like, I listened to it a second time, and it was like, I have to finish these books. So I flat out told my wife, I'm spending some money on buying a bunch more Audible credits, and I have to get these books. And she's okay. So, but yeah,
to be like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so well, okay. So let's go ahead and just and start with the book. First off, we'll hit first impressions. Obviously you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, no, it was. So this is the second book that I've actually, third book I've ever listened to as an audiobook.
Okay.
By far,
Yeah.
my favorite.
Yes.
And Ray Porter did an excellent job. Made sure that the inflections were proper. Will Wheaton did a good job with Ready Player One, but you got lost in the fact that it was Will Wheaton. Like like it took away a little bit. Where this one, he is Bob, right?
Yeah.
Like that was what is cool for me, is that when I'm listening to this guy, that's Bob for me now, and it was really cool for that part of it anyway. So.
Yeah.
So Chris, you enjoyed it as well?
Yes, I did. I'm really starting to like audiobooks. I didn't think I would, because I thought that, because I don't want to get a Kindle or anything, because I like holding a book and flipping the pages and the whole texture and textile thing, the whole thing. But listening to somebody read a book and do different voices for the characters and give emotion and everything like that just kind of makes it that much.
Well, when they do it really well, when you have a good storyteller reading a good book, I mean, it just gives it that much more. And
we tried listening to Astrophysics for
People on the Run. Or
something like that. The Neil deGrasse Tyson book.
Yes.
Yeah. And he reads it, but it's hard to listen to him because it's him and he just sort of explains it like you say. So he's fast and he's
like
right over my head. But I loved the book. It was amazing. It was really, really good. I didn't understand any of the science part, but I loved the story. I didn't understand the science of it. I was like, okay, whatever. I believe you.
That's one of the nice things about this book, is there is a lot of science in it. And I mean, I loved it. I loved him going into it. That's one of the things that I did really enjoy. But I could definitely see there's enough story in this and enough character that you can completely gloss over the science and still love this book. So
it's like The Martian. I know The Martian, it was a lot of math, a lot of science, all that, but it had so much story to it that it didn't. I could gloss over the math part and still want to read the rest of the story.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Jennifer, what were your thoughts?
Well, I am reading it. So I had a hard time, kind of like you said, keeping up with all the storylines. And I can't imagine having to do that audibly, because I'm having such a hard time reading it that listening to it would be a nightmare, I think. The way it just jumps from person to person and timeline to timeline, and I don't know. So that's a little frustrating. I don't know if it would be easier to read, though, if it was all like streamlined in one person either. I don't know. So that's making it difficult for me to fully, enjoy. But it's a good story. Other than that, that's just frustrating. I have enjoyed reading it when I've had time, but obviously I haven't been able to finish it in a day and a half like y'all.
Well, okay. Once again, I listened to everything at double speed, and I've been doing inventory, so I've had a lot of time to have my headphones on. So
yeah, I can't listen or read at work either. So it's
that's true. Yeah. So
the interesting part is, like, I would love to actually I tried to get my hands on the book, and it wasn't available in the bookstore at all. I think they can order it, but it
takes so long.
It would have taken forever. So that's why we got the audiobook, and as well as what Sean had recommended. And the thing that I liked about the audiobook was, and I think it would be easier to actually follow along, because for each character that is brought in, Ray Porter changes his voice just enough so that you can actually get used to each character, and I really like that. So it would actually make it easier to follow along, because the only thing that we had to pay attention to was at the very beginning to see who was talking.
Yes.
And then it was, okay, this is from this person's perspective. Now we can go.
Because we had to do that a couple of times. It was like, wait, go back.
Yeah. Who's talking here? Hang
on. I've listened to this book probably 4 times at least. Like I said, I really, really liked it. So in retrospect, going through it multiple times and kind of knowing what's going on definitely has helped. So interesting story. The way that I normally do the books for this book club is I'll go through and listen to it, and as I'm listening to it, I will pause and I'll make little notes on my phone. I got a new phone, and I was having an issue with it, and I had to restore it. And unfortunately, I had gone through and done like step by step everything that happened in the book, and I lost all of that. So that being said, it's going to be a little more general in our review for the night. We're not going to have the whole step by step thing like I tend to do sometimes, but that it should be fine. So yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into the book. Let's see here. So the book really kind of, and I don't even see the one other issue with reading or listening to it as an audiobook is I have no idea like where the chapters are. Like I just lose track of that. To me, it just flows all together. So I can't tell you how many chapters in it is whenever the book like really starts to get going for me. And that is whenever he finally gets out on his own and starts doing stuff. But yeah, so the book is what's his last name again? Bob Johansson. Okay, so we start off in the beginning of the book. A guy named Bob, and of course because we are Bob. And Bob Johansson, he owns a software company, a small software company, and he's literally just sold it to a big company and is making quite a bit of money. He's a little bit of an outcast. And he's definitely an introvert. He kind of prefers to, do things by himself or whatever. He's getting over a bad breakup, but he's in Las Vegas with some of his coworkers who are also his closest friends. And they're at a science fiction convention. What's interesting is I can see this convention very much like a normal convention, but there's definitely a little harder science to it as well, which is fine because he starts talking about going to some of the panels. And I mean, they're talking about some super hard science stuff, which is still cool. But so he's going to this convention or whatever, and it starts talking about these types of satellites,
Yep.
self-replicating satellites, and these theories that they have, and so on and so forth. And then he proceeds to tell the rest of his group, he's like, oh, by the way, I also signed up to have myself cryogenically frozen when I die. And most of them are okay with it. The one woman in the group, just it's like, well, I don't know why you're doing this. It's stupid, whatever. So, and he explains, he's like, look, I'm a humanist. I don't believe there's an afterlife. It, if it works, great. If it doesn't, oh well. I'm not, I may have wasted a bunch of money, but whatever. It's not a big deal.
No worse off.
Exactly. I'm no worse off. I could be better off, but I'm no worse off. So, and then literally the next thing we know, he's crossing the street and gets hit by a cab and dies.
Spoiler.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Guys.
Yeah, he dies. The end. No.
Good timing though, eh? Like, hey, like sign the papers and shit. Let's be completely honest. I'm not an optimist. I try not to be too much of a pessimist, but it's definitely that theory. Like, if I do hit the lottery, I'm going to be looking over my back constantly because I'm going to be like, well, time for me to die. This is when it's going to happen. Because that will be my luck.
So random.
Yeah. So he's hit by a car and he dies. And when he wakes up, he's trying to figure out what's going on. And I'll just kind of race through the part because there is some part there where he's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. There's a scientist there, and he basically tells him in a nutshell, it's 113 years later, I believe.
117 years.
117, I think that's right. Yeah, 117 years later. That in that time, an extremely religious president has come into power and basically thrown his weight around, and there was a coup, and as a result, there were nukes on, in the U.S., and basically the U.S. is no more. And what is the name of the country now? I cannot remember. I
don't even remember.
Wait, now I got
anyway, it's an extremely religious state, and not quite 1984, but kind of getting close there. Yeah. So to the point that, the doctor's like, we're not supposed to speak out and everything. And yet, even though it is this highly religious state, there are different sects and factions, and they are competing for control and everything. And he tells him, he said, look, you're a computer program now. You're basically an AI. We scanned your brain, and you're an AI. And of course he starts asking, he's like, well, what happened to my body? And they're like, well, to do that, you kind of have to destroy the body. So he's like, okay, well, I'm dead. And takes to it very quickly, which the doctor is very excited about. He's like, because most of the time when this happens, people tend to go crazy and has a problem. Mm-hmm. And at this point, he starts explaining to him, well, so here's the thing. You're one of 5 different AIs from previously, deceased people that have been scanned in. And you're kind of in a competition right now for a big project. Can't tell you what the project is. But as long as you don't go crazy, and work well and adapt well, you've got a shot and if not, you may get shelved. And he's like, okay, well, there's my motivation. Yeah.
So, and in saying that, I love how there's times where, so he's like, can we get some like limbs so that I can, because he talks with his hands, right? So,
yes.
And then they give him this little, what I picture is like just a little simple robotic arm.
Yeah.
And he starts inflecting with it. And I can totally picture that happening, and it would be something that I would need to do too. So.
Oh no, absolutely. I don't, that would be one of the hardest things for me is if I were a computer not being able to, because Cyrus is in the thing. He knows I talk with my hands constantly. Yeah. So anyway, so he's going through this, and the scientist, starts to fill him in on stuff that's going on, and little bits here and there, and he starts to do some exploring, and 3 of the other 5 AIs all die for whatever reason. They go into feedback loops, they go crazy, whatever, and he he's like, he keeps getting shut off, and he hates this. He's like, why do you keep shutting me off? And he's like, because if we leave you with idle time, right now you're perceiving time like we normally do, but whenever, stuff's not going on, you can actually perceive time much faster or much slower. And
much slower is the big problem. Yeah.
And what, you could basically just, for what would be a couple of minutes for you would seem like years. And so we've got to be careful. He's like, well, if you would give me stuff to think about and do, maybe it's not such a problem. So sure enough, that's what happens. And during his time, there's a couple of different attacks on the building. And at one point, he's learning to use these little like spider type droid things to do some building and stuff. And he ends up protecting part of the building. And of course, everyone's like scared to death that he got out, quote unquote, got out of his little, container area. Mm-hmm. And it's at that point the doctor tells him, or the scientist tells him, yeah, we're not so much scared of you. It's the fact that if someone found out and thought you were a threat, they would set off the nuclear device that's underneath us. And of course, he's blown away by that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I got the countries. So in this new world, the world has been broken up into the United States of Eurasia, which includes Europe and most of Western Russia. There's China. Then there's Faith, which is all of North America except Washington State, British Columbia, the Australian Federation, Republic of Africa, and the Brazilian Empire.
Yes, those damn Brazilians.
So that's what
damn Brazilians.
Yeah. So that's.
I'm allowed to say it. It's based on the book.
That's right. And why can I not remember Faith? Because that's one of the things he keeps bringing up is there are so many poor acronyms throughout the entire book.
Faith stands for Free American Independent Theocratic Homogeny.
That's right. So and I love that. That's how it was actually described to the American people, or like the North American people at the time, was just the long way of saying that, because it was an anti religious faction that was running the country, and then this one kind of came along to take over, and Bob was like, how did they not see this coming like a mile away? Faith is the acronym, and this it's brutal, and okay. A lot of things we could draw, conclusions here, but whatever. So we're going to leave that alone. No, yeah. Pardon me. So he's going through the training, and things start getting stepped up, and he's like, he starts looking around, and he's finding more information, and he finds out that he's the last one. Basically, he's quote unquote one. And it's at this point that he's starting to give the information that your purpose is we're going to put you into the spaceship and into the satellite with a bunch of, I'm sorry? Self-replicating probes.
Yeah, self-replicating probe.
Van
Noin. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So
and this thing includes a futuristic, it's not warp drive, but it's a futuristic propulsion system.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we are still trying to figure out if it's true. And so far, they're back and forth about it. But NASA is extremely excited about this idea. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of 3D printers that can actually print things at the molecular level. So he can literally print anything. He just has to have raw materials to go in. And it does explain that the thing about the 3D printers are they can make their own 3D printers. They can replicate themselves. But, of course, that's an extremely complex task, which takes a lot of time, energy, and resources. But then, other things like stuff that goes boom is usually not a good idea, because that tends to have problems. And when it goes boom, it tends to destroy everything around it. So, at this point, he's, things are getting rushed, and he's asking questions, and, the scientist is basically like, look, things are not good here on Earth. Like, there's several governments basically left. We're basically kind of like circling the drain at this point. Everyone's very, edgy. We're literally on the verge of war. It's just kind of like who pulls the trigger first. And everyone else is kind of trying to do the exact same thing that we're doing. So they get him set up, they get him shipped off and into the satellite, and he's literally, attached to the space station and waiting for things to go. And he gets a message from the scientist basically saying, well, I'm sorry, before he gets shipped off, the scientist is basically said, look, there's a very high probability that someone's going to try to blow you up. So be prepared for that. Also, here are the codes to basically rip out all of the controls that Faith would have over you. So you can do, whatever. And he's like, okay, so he memorizes these. Yeah.
Yeah. He's saying, I'm trusting you to help humanity, basically, at this point. He says, I've known you well enough to have faith that you're going to do that. And so that's why he's giving them the tools to be able to get around those
basically
controls.
Free will.
Yeah, give him back his free will.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so it's at this point he gets a message and he's literally decoding it like in, faster than real time as to, he's being shot at. So he immediately ejects and shoots off, and he's being attacked by, basically he looks back and it looks like, I think the Brazilian shot first.
Shot. Yeah, they shot.
And then someone shot back.
Faith took them out and shot at them. And
yeah. And it's at this point he's hitting Saturn. He specifically makes a stop at Saturn on the way out because he's always wanted to see it. And then starts heading on to, other galaxies. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I really like about this book, and the fact that it does talk about the fact that he can, speed or speed up or slow down his perception of time, is that we'll literally go from section to section in the book, and it's like, oh, it's been 4 years. Like, he talks about, okay, well, I've got to get to here. It's going to take, it's a 4-year trip. Yep. And he talks about something for a few, for a couple, what would essentially be a paragraph or so. And, oh, hey, it's been 4 years. We're there. Yeah. So. Which is nice, we're not going to, because it would be insane to try to do the rest of this. So,
it's really great in the book.
Yeah.
It's really great. Yeah.
So the first place he shows up, he gets to his destination, and he's been told that the Brazilians have pretty much sent a ship after him, and it's probably going to be pretty ready to try to take him out. So it's at this point. Oh, I'm sorry. He stops. He intercepts a message. He figures it out. He figures out that Faith was basically trying to A, blow him up, and then B, control him. So he rips out all of that information first, so he doesn't have to worry with it. And then he starts preparing to deal with the Brazilians, and he starts creating what he calls busters, which are basically just, it's kind of like a missile, but it doesn't explode, less explodey. Yeah. So more punchy.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he has his first encounter with the Brazilians, the Brazilian, and he pretty much figures out that the Brazilian was definitely he wasn't a laid back guy like Bob was. He was definitely military and was focused on let's kill and blow shit up. So then once he Medeiros, yes. Yeah. So he ends up taking out Medeiros, or at least one Medeiros, because he's not quite sure about that. And this is where the book really starts to take off, at least for me.
Yep.
It's at this point he starts thinking, he's like, okay, well, I was sent out here to do a purpose. Maybe I should actually try to, do that purpose. We'll do some exploring, see if we can find some other planets for, humanity to explore and hopefully colonize, get off the rock we're on, do some actual exploring as well. And you know what, maybe we should check on Earth, because it's kind of been a while. It's been like 30 years. Maybe we should check to see if there's even anything left on Earth worth saving. So it's at this point he starts setting up his factories and his 3D printers, and he starts to do something that he's kind of uncomfortable with, which is clone himself. So we've kind of glossed over this at this point. The book is it does take a lot of time to look at the idea that, is he Bob? Because, it is the thought process is the fact that he's no longer human, does that still make him Bob? Mm-hmm. Does the fact that at one point, in fact, even, he was restored from a backup. So if that's even the case, is he even still the original version of Bob, as it were? Like, he's not even Bob 2.0. He might be Bob 3 at this point. So it does play around with that a lot idea, and he's kind of nervous about the idea of cloning himself, but he goes ahead and does it anyway. And he clones himself, and he makes 4 copies of himself. One of the first things he decides is that we can't all be Bob. First thing you got to do is come up with a new name.
So one thing that we haven't really touched on it either yet is that to make sure that Bob doesn't go insane, he created himself a little bit of a VR.
Oh my God! How did I forget? How did I forget?
So that way he feels like he actually exists.
Yes. Because
he felt very disembodied because all he saw was his sight was a camera, and then I liked and again going back to when he was learning, he was kind of looking at himself through the drone so he could see what his face looked like, and it was just a camera on a pod. So that kind of played with his mind a bit, so that's why he created this VR in order to make sure that he doesn't go insane. And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like, you have to feel like you exist in order to actually not drive yourself insane, right? So I know I'd have to create some sort of VR as well. So.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, he does create this VR, and the interface that he uses to actually interact with everything is called Guppy.
I love Guppy.
And so even though his VR self basically looks like he did, when he was alive, Guppy looks, acts, and talks and sounds like Admiral Akbar.
And Ray Porter does an amazing Admiral Akbar.
Oh yeah.
Yes, he does.
Oh yeah.
Because anytime he looks over, he's like, Guppy, what's going on? And it's just
Everyone up here. Gosh.
So, as you can probably tell, Bob is he's a geek. He's a software engineer, but he was definitely a geek. He was going to a science fiction convention.
Yeah.
And this really starts to play out whenever he starts reproducing, as it were. So Bob creates 4 clones. The first clone is calls himself Riker because he's number 2. Not quite number 1, but number 2 is close enough. Which is funny in itself. Yeah. He also creates 3 others. He creates Bill, he creates Milo, and he creates Mario.
Yes.
And I'm never was sure about the name. I got Riker, and Bill I know is kind of, William. Okay, that's pretty close. But I never really got where Mark and Milo came from. Like, some of the names are very distinctive. Like, in the later books, some of the other clones come on, and you're just like, oh, well, obviously I know where they got that from.
Thor.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yes.
So.
But yeah, Mario, I never really understood. Like, I always think of like Super Mario, but he's a loner and he doesn't want it, so he just goes off on his own. And
yeah. And then, like I said, Milo, I really wasn't sure where he got the Milo from either. They may have said exactly where Milo came from, but I don't remember.
No, not really. Not that I remember.
Okay. So he creates these 4. He creates these 4 clones of himself, and he immediately notices that. And I immediately thought of what is that movie called? When Michael Keaton Multiplicity. That when you make a clone of a clone, it's always different. Well, in this case, it's still a clone of himself, but one of the things I loved about this book is it's very self-referential, and it's because it even points out the fact it's like these Bobs have these different personalities. Well, why is that? And they're like, well, quantum physics, the way things, and like, that's bullshit. We don't know. You're just making up gobbledygook, and that's just what we're supposed to live with. And they're like, yeah, pretty much. I don't know.
They don't really dig into it any more than that, and they admit that in the book. And I love the same thing because
yeah,
some things just you can't explain.
Exactly. Yes, and this would definitely be something that at a molecular level that there are going to be changes. Now, sometimes it's a big change. For example, so Mario is very, very standoffish and is very doesn't care, doesn't really say anything. He even said he's like I was pretty. Much a loner and when I was alive, but this is kind of a bit of extreme. And Riker's very stern, very direct. Yes.
Doesn't play just
Bill is just kind of really laid back, and Milo is too to some extent. But then like there are these personality clashes really quickly. But he even says, he's like, if my parents were to see this, they would look at it and still be like, oh, well, that's still Bob. It's just different moods of Bob, or maybe different phases of Bob's life or something.
Yeah.
So we have exactly. Yeah. We have the five personalities. So like I said, I originally had in my notes the step-by-step as how everything else goes. I don't have that anymore. So what I thought we would do with the rest of the book is the five Bobs, let's take them one at a time, and we'll talk about kind of what their purpose is and what it is they tackle. Is there a particular Bob we'd like to tackle first?
Well, why don't we stick with the original Bob?
All right, so original Bob. Bob,
and then we'll move back to going back to Earth and all that other stuff.
Yeah. So they decide, okay, so they're like, okay, well, we need to do this, and a couple of them, one of them volunteered for this. We need to do that. Another one volunteered for that. And he always finds it interesting. He's like, because there are some of them that are like, okay, well, I'd volunteer to stay here. For example, Bill decides, he's like, well, my radar is not, on the same frequency that everyone else is, but I'm getting a lot more range, and I'd actually kind of like to really explore that and maybe do some tester stuff. And he's like, so maybe I'll just kind of hang out here and kind of be the center hub or whatever. And, because the other ones are like, it works out great. Yeah. But the rest of them are like, why would you want to stay here? There's not really anything here. And so Riker's like, well, I'll go check to see what's going on Earth. And they're like, okay, that's cool. Mario basically is like, I'm just going to go as far as I possibly can. And Milo's like,
never hear from him again, right?
We do hear from him again a little bit more in the book. So he really comes to play in the other books, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, it's later on.
But
yeah, he's definitely a check out. See you later. All the best.
Yeah.
You guys are nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. More distracted in the chat says, isn't Bob a battery-operated boyfriend?
Oh, God.
I'll never think of a person named Bob like that again. All right. So anyway, so let's stick with Bob.
I know.
With Bob. So Bob goes and goes to check out this other solar system that could possibly house life. It's not too far away. It seems interesting. He's like, this is probably one of the next places we need to go check out. So he goes out and checks it out. And he checks it out, and the stuff that it explains, I'm hoping all the astrophysics that he explains in here is pretty on par, because it makes sense. Because he does talk about the Cinderella zone. He talks about how most solar systems have these certain things built into it, and how planets have to be a certain distance from the sun, and has to have certain things to happen to supposedly be able to sustain life. So he finds this planet, Delta Eridani, I believe.
It depends on which book you listen to, because if you're listening to the first book, he pronounces it Eridani.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And in the second and third book, it's Eridani.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, wait, you want somewhere different?
I was a little off too on that, but I'm just like, okay, it's Bob. I know where Bob is. I don't need to know the specific name. I just know Bob.
So what I think has happened is he pronounced it in the first book, Eridani, and then they were like, some people obviously listened to it and they're like, that's not how you pronounce it. Can you pronounce it Eridani? Okay.
Okay, sure, whatever. Yeah. We'll just retcon that whole thing. So Bob ends up in we're going to go with Eridani, Delta Eridani, and discovers life. And there's two forms of life that he finds there. The first form of life he finds multiple smaller types of life, but he finds these bat pig hybrid creatures, which he ends up referring to as the Deltans, and the Deltans are very early stage. They do live in clusters. They do live in family groups. But they're very Stone Age. They're just now starting to learn about tool working. And he sees one Deltan in particular, a younger boy, who actually has made a flint weapon. And it's at this point he's like, okay, well, this guy seems to know what's going on. So he starts to follow him and he gets attached to him. It's at this point he creates Garfield, doesn't he? He clones Garfield, I think.
He makes a couple of clones.
Garfield is Bill's clone, isn't it? Are we talking about Bill?
Oh, that's right. Garfield is with Bill. Who's with Bob?
Here, hang on a second.
Bob has
Marvin or Martin?
Marvin, Luke, and Bender.
Milo,
Marvin, Luke, and Bender.
Is it Milo that sticks with him in the?
Yeah, it's Marvin.
No, Milo goes off and gets.
Milo goes off. No, it's
Milo goes off. It's Marvin that sticks around because
Marvin sticks with him. That's right.
Luke and Bender go basically on a.
Luke and Bender
are off. Yeah.
They follow. They go to track.
They
Milo.
track one of the other guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Milo.
Yes. So
Mario. One of the dudes.
I'm
sorry.
This
I'm looking
how
at the
complicated the story gets.
Exactly.
I still love it though.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got Marvin with him, and they start watching what's going on. And as time goes by, they start figuring out they're being attacked by the Grilloids.
The Grilloids.
The Grilloids. That's right. So there's a gorilla type creature that's basically running in and killing the Deltans, and so they help. What are they? Archimedes is what they named this one young Deltan boy. They show him where some flint is, and the kid is smart.
They don't show him. They just drop it and.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And he finds a crap. He finds a crap ton of it, and he hoards it.
Yeah. And he hoards it, but then he starts making some knives and stuff out of it. Yep. Takes it to his mom, which helps them. Then starts treating it with some of the other members of the group, specifically the bigger, stronger Deltans. Yeah. They're attacked, and at this point, they actually fend off the Grilloids and figure out where were we? Okay, so anyway, he's helping Arnold, and he's helping the Deltans.
Yes.
And it just okay. It looks like it's finally coming back up. What the hell? I don't understand this. So that's kind of where mainly where Bob stays. Bob has decided he's going to start helping the Deltans, and they start doing research, and they figure out the Deltans have. I'm trying to remember. Am I getting too far into the second book where they move?
No, that's
later.
Okay. Because they figured out.
Well, no,
the rate of being attacked by the Grilloids, they're going to go extinct.
They're going to go extinct, so they have to move them.
Yeah.
To where the flint is.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that being said, Marvin.
Marvin. Yeah.
Marvin and Bob have a bit of a discussion of
the
prime directive of not interfering and whether that should be a good thing. Maybe they're intelligent because they were getting attacked by the Grilloids, and are we actually stinting their growth? And Bob basically says, "Fuck that, we're helping them out anyway." And
he gets attached quickly.
Yeah, this is kind of like an ethical dilemma here because it's like he obviously reveals himself to them, and if they survive generations later, they're gonna have built a religion to this guy. I can already see it. This is how those kinds of things start. And are you, should you let things happen naturally, or are you giving them an unfair advantage and they're gonna wipe out everything else? I don't know. I'm a little on the fence about that.
Which at this point he also shows himself to Archimedes. He takes a small surveillance drone down and starts helping him out. And some of the Deltans are pretty the medicine woman is just not having it.
Nope.
Her though.
Yeah, she's just not having it at all, and neither is the Deltan that kind of starts, buddying up, the future soon to be girlfriend.
Is that her name?
Diana.
Yeah.
Diana. But a lot of the other ones are like, well, okay, you keep showing us stuff that seems to work and seems to be like you have our best interest, so we're going to keep going with it. So, So for the most of the rest of the book, this is pretty much what Bob does is Bob has decided he's going to watch over this budding civilization and do everything he can to protect them, and try not to interfere too much. Like, he does have kind of an escape plan eventually down the road, but for right now he's like, no, this is what I'm doing, because he talks about he didn't really have much. He had some family, but he wasn't like super close with them. He got along really well with his sisters.
Yeah.
But he just wasn't that, he just wasn't that close to his family. And for me in the book, this is the version of Bob where he's like, okay, I really kind of want a family, and this is the closest thing he can get. So that's what he's doing. So let's move on to Bill. Bill's the one that decided to stay back and kind of hang out, and was curious about a few things. One of the things he was curious about was trying to get contact, long range contact. Yeah. So instead of having to wait light years to get information back and forth, he creates a new type of technology and starts sending the information out there for the other Bobs to start building, so that they can have basically instantaneous communication.
Which I love this theory.
Yes, I do too.
What I liked about it was that it was an easy way to explain away the light year delay. It's an easy way for them to say, okay, yeah, it's theoretical. Yeah, okay, but listen, after a computer works on this, as a computer as amazing as what Bob is, works on it for so long, they're going to figure this kind of crap out. So just buy it. And
yeah, exactly.
So I like that. Which I love the running gag as well when everybody starts the first time that they log into BobNet. Anyway, that's a whole nother.
I mean, that happens in this book, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, one of the things is, as soon as someone gets so one of the other Bobs will get the information. They're like, oh, hey, look, Bill's got this thing set up, and we can communicate instantaneously. That's awesome. And so they get it set up, and they log into BobNet, and they're in their VR, and they contact Bill, and they're like, oh wow, my God, we can like Skype call instantaneously. This is awesome. And then Bill literally shows up in their VR, and kind of scares the hell out of him. And he's just like, oh, I love doing this.
Yeah.
But Bill also starts looking at every time. Bill also is looking at trying to he's trying to make a planet called Ragnarok livable.
Yeah, he's trying to terraform it.
He's trying to terraform it. I could not remember the term. Yes, he's trying to terraform it. So he's slowly but surely trying to drop icebergs on this planet. One of them gets a little out of hand. Yeah. But Bill becomes he is slowly but surely getting it, and building it into something. He is slowly but surely building up this planet, and it does that over the course of the books. But Bill's become he's our mad scientist, as it were. Mm-hmm. And without him, we don't get a lot of the technology that we, slowly but surely get over the course of the 3 books. Mm-hmm. But he's very laid back and just very like, let's research this. Let's do this.
And I thought it was interesting that later on, some of the newer Bobs actually wanted to, like that, either went away or went to want to explore, found themselves actually envying Bill because he was able to work on all the little things that he wanted to work on.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. So
this is retirement Bob. This is
this is definitely retirement Bob.
Yeah, he gets.
Yeah. I'm gonna sit around and piddle around with all the stuff I want to mess around with. So yeah. So
you can check in with me later, but right now we're gonna do this, and yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump to Riker. Before Riker heads off, they have a discussion, and they're like, "Hey, we don't know what we're gonna find back at Earth when you get there, so it's probably probably a good idea you don't go by yourself." So they make another clone, and this clone is Garfield, and Garfield is quite literally the most animated of the group.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry, not Garfield.
No,
not Garfield.
Homer. Homer goes with.
Homer is the most animated of the group because he literally takes on the Homer Simpson like caricature
Yes.
for
His
quite a
VR
while.
becomes Homer Simpson.
Yes.
Yes. To
Which he
include
eventually does, but
to include like, animations of his head blowing up and everything else, just, to explain stuff. And doesn't really sit well with Riker.
I don't think he's taking it serious.
Yeah, he doesn't think he's taking it serious at all. And it talks about, he's like, yeah, there was like, there was like several months there that it was all just audio calls. And he's like, I think he finally got the hint that I'm not dealing with it. So, but the voice that he comes up with for Homer is not Homer Simpson, but very Homer Simpson-esque.
it's unique enough that it's Homer immediately.
Yeah, so
as soon as you, because Garfield's a little bit like when we get to Garfield, he's a little bit deeper and a little bit kind of like a Garfield, but Homer is a much deeper version of all the other Bobs, and who's talking immediately.
exactly, yeah. So his voice has definitely got the most change and inflection in it during the reading. So, so Homer and Riker head back. And Riker has taken on, like, his VR is the deck of the Enterprise, and like he is full out.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
that would be Sean. Sean would be
Riker.
Totally.
But with a little bit of everything else mixed in. So
yeah. So they head back to Earth, and they're like, okay, look, we need to be cautious about this, and they start doing long range scans and everything, and they basically figure out that the Medeiros is there, or at least a clone or version of Medeiros is there, and there are like 4 ships, I believe, and they're doing calculations to figure out how many missiles they have and everything else, and how many busters they have, and how they'd be able to take this out, so on and so forth. So they end up making a high speed flyby. Oh, at this point, I'm sorry, we skipped way over this. So after one of the things that Bob first did was he upgraded his ship to a version 2 that was much faster, had a lot more capabilities and everything. And and so they sent, so these ships are definitely upgraded since the last time they fought Medeiros. And they do a quick flyby. They drag, they pull 2 of the Medeiros ships off. Basically circle around the far side of the sun, and are able to knock them out. They then head back towards Earth, come around on the other side of Earth, and when they get into the battle with Medeiros, Homer is taken out of the fight, but not dead. He's just taken out of the fight. But they do manage to end up winning the battle. And it's at this point they also realize Medeiros has literally been grabbing asteroids from the belt and has been dropping them on the planet. And specifically, yes,
what's that?
That is fucking crazy. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a scorched earth policy. It's basically, I think, was it China that they thought?
Yeah, they were going after
him. So they were basically, and he's like, they've already dropped a couple on there, but the next couple that were coming in were going to be planet killers. Like, it was going to wipe everything off.
Yep.
So they stop that, and of course they find this technology interesting, how he's able to move these planets, or he's moved these asteroids, and they send that back to Bill. And Bill's like, okay, that's cool. I'll have to check some of this stuff out. Yep. So they start scanning the Earth. They do multiple scans of the Earth. They get Homer up and running again with his own ship. And it's at this point that they find there is life left on Earth, but there's not a lot of time left. Like, there's maybe 100 years left, and then the planet's pretty much gone.
They're basically in a nuclear. It's becoming a nuclear winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are pockets of civilization. The first one they find is one of the largest. And it's being commanded by Butterworth. I love Butterworth.
I didn't at first. I didn't
love Butterworth,
but I definitely love Butterworth afterwards. And I liked how Riker and him did not get along.
Exactly. Yes, it's definitely, and you can definitely see the 2 personalities there, because the one is very literally, He's doing everything he can. And that was the other thing. The introspection in this is very good because he's like, I understand where Butterworth is coming from. He's trying to do the best thing possible for his people.
Yeah.
But he has to realize I'm running the game. So yeah, that's the way it's going to go. But over the course of time, they end up finding out there's like 127 other small pockets of civilization, and they're all basically become their own delegates. And so he has a new UN. And for someone who was originally, his original personality was a complete introvert, he's basically now in charge of trying to figure out how he's going to move several million people off of the planet. 15 million people off of the planet. That's all that's left
of humanity.
And they're still fighting as if.
And they're still fighting.
So stupid, right?
You know what's hilarious though? That would be.
That's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. I thought, yes.
That actually happened.
Yes, as stupid as it would be if there were only 15 million people left on this planet. If we were in different locations, we would still be fighting over, well, who gets to go first? And why do they get to go first? Why can't I go first? And this, that, and the other. And
I want that planet. Why can't I have that planet? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not helping each other. They don't care if people die. It's so selfish and just terrible and the worst of humanity. Like, ugh. Yep.
And that's why I love it so much whenever Riker puts his foot down. He just like shuts everyone up and he's like, we're done for the day. And then you start getting this other side of Homer, and Homer's like, Riker, they're scared. They're all about to die. You've got to cut these people some slack, give them something to do. And so, and that's when as he put it, my stock in Homer started going up. He's like, I realize he's a goofball, but he does take this shit serious.
Yeah. And you know what? Those two couldn't have been better paired.
Oh, no,
Riker
absolutely.
and Homer were probably my favorite pairing out of everybody in this until the second book, and that's a whole other issue. But I loved Homer and Riker.
Okay, Logan.
What?
Yeah, they're very good.
No, what I'm saying is no.
I heard you.
You didn't hear what I said.
I did.
I have a different favorite couple in the second book, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. Anyway, so they're dealing with Butterworth, and they're dealing with all these impersonalities. Oh, and then they find there is a small faction left of Faith, and Faith is like, all right, they think they're still under control, so they're like replicant, this, that, and the other, and he completely shuts them down. And I loved every minute of that.
Yep. Especially when Cranston is like basically saying, and when I hit this button, you will think differently, and does it. And Riker's like, yeah, that's not going to work, dude.
I only have one word, or I have two words for you. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's at that point he's introduced. He brings up. He's like, "This is your sister's great daughter," and so he starts to have communication with her, and then we start to get this new dynamic with Riker, where it's, at first he's just like, okay, I'm here to save the humans and do what I can, and now it's like, okay, I've got family, and I need to watch out for my family, and so that becomes. Every character in this book starts off as one fragment of his personality, and then as time goes by, they get deeper and deeper and get to be more well-rounded characters, which is one of the reasons I really liked this book. None of the characters in here stayed two-dimensional to me at all.
Medeiros.
But yes, well, Medeiros stayed two-dimensional. My apologies. So Riker's focused on trying to get the ships, get a ship built, and balancing how he's going to build ships and build resources and feed people and all this other stuff, and it's an absolute nightmare. And so I think by the end of the first book, they got Butterworth's group off of the planet, and a couple of other ones. I think they got them off the planet by the end of the first book.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So,
en route.
Yeah, they were en route to where they're going to end up, which leads us to Milo. So Milo goes off and finds twin planets. One of them has bigger, it's definitely more livable. It seems like it'd be more livable. The wildlife is a little more wild. And of course he calls them Romulus and Vulcan. So so basically his job is to start preparing those planets for colonization.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Does he run into Medeiros? I forgot.
He ends up getting exploded after the second.
Oh,
season, right?
that's right. Yes. Then I think Milo gets exploded because once he finds them, he also finds Medeiros, and then that's when they have to go back over there. Or am I getting that confused?
I don't remember.
He goes to a second system after he finds those planets, and he's like, "Yay, I'm going to find another one," and then he gets shot down.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
I just read it.
That's right.
You know,
He sets
last
up the
The
factories
Kuiper belt
to
and
make
all
sure
that
that
stuff,
and then
and
he heads off. That's right.
heads off, and then that's when.
That's right.
I forgot about that. Yeah. So
Frickin' Medeiros.
yeah, but Milo ends up initially finding the planets that we will eventually start to resettle. So, which the last one of the original 5 is Mario. Mario doesn't have a lot in the first book, but he does show up in the first book again. And so we've got basically the recolonization of planet Earth. We have trying to get everyone off of Earth. We have research, finding out new stuff that's going to help us throughout the rest of the books. And then, of course, we have this budding civilization that, Bob is trying to protect. Mm-hmm. And Mario introduces the other interesting aspect of this book, which I also loved. Mario goes way the hell out there and finds a planet where there are remnants of this massive die out. Like there's something has come through and literally within like seconds killed all life on this planet. And he's trying to figure out what the hell is going on with it. And ends up finding the first evidence of what they refer to in the rest of the trilogy as the Others. And the Others are a very Borg is not right because they're not assimilating.
But that's all I could think. Every time they explained it, it just felt like the Borg because it's just like, no, this is happening whether you like it or not.
If it's, I would say it would be like the Borg meets Alien.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, so in the other books, we find out more about the Others. But at this point, all we know is there's obviously another super advanced, super intelligent species out there that is just harvesting planets for all of the raw materials to include
everything's gone.
To include all of the organics, which him and his clones end up figuring out the only reason you would harvest organics would be for food.
Yeah.
So that's we get this looming, now we've got a looming bad guy. We've got Medeiros is kind of bad, but we're already kind of outpacing him. He's more like a thorn in our side at this point. But now we've got the quote unquote big bad that's been introduced. So
yeah.
So with that, we're gonna, that's pretty much kind of the first book of the trilogy.
We did find out about the satellites that went out. The Use one crashed, right? The English.
The Australian. We forgot.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Guy got discovered.
I love him.
What's his name?
Henry.
I love Henry.
Henry Roberts. Yeah.
Or Henry.
So yeah, which one comes up on him?
Linus.
I
just looked up.
Yeah. So yeah, I love how he handles it, where he pings him to say, "Hey, is this another Medeiros?" Essentially, and all he gets back is "Piss off, mate," and it's like, "Oh shit, okay, this is what the hell's going on?" And then so. Henry is what happens when you don't have a VR.
Yes. And
so Linus builds him a VR to kind of bring him back to somewhat of a reality, and I love that because and it comes up later in the other books as well. I loved his story. I wish you could find out more about him than what we find out, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, because it explains one of the reasons why Bob probably survived is because he created the VR that he did, so that he had a way to stabilize himself. Henry talks about like just being in this dark room or this dark nothingness with these voices screaming at him to do different things and build things and do this, that, and the other, and that's why he started going crazy, as it were. So
yeah.
So what would your VR be if you were in this situation and you were the ship?
Ooh.
I think I'd want to be a Lego. I want to make everything Legos.
That would be awesome.
Or Star Wars, obviously, but Legos would be so cool.
I am so much more, at least now at this point in my life, I am so much more of a Star Wars person. That being said, because of the type of missions and types of things that he's doing, I really have to say I'd probably do the bridge from the Next Gen Enterprise.
Yeah. So, I like the floating platform that one of them came up with. I can't remember which one it was, where he's just floating over the different cities of Earth.
Yes,
I thought that's
an awesome one.
You know what? Mine would probably change a lot.
Oh yeah, I think mine would change.
Just depends
constantly.
on the mood. And some days I would have. You know what? Some days I'd be driving a DeLorean.
I'd like to think I would be that way, but I really think I would end up like, I think it was Bill, like eventually Bill's like, I'm really kind of doing a bunch of stuff and I really kind of let this place go. He's like, I've pretty much had the same background forever. I don't know. So. Yeah.
But, I'm sure I'd settle on something eventually, but for a while I'd be trying on different hats.
Yeah, it'd be change a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
That was.
So that's the first book of the trilogy of the Bobaverse, as it were.
So and all these cliffhangers are absolutely in the book. Like there is a what? And Chris's reaction to when the book ended was perfect. She's like, "What? That's it?"
Yeah. This book was clearly written, and we talked about this before the show. This book was clearly written as part of a trilogy. Like the author clearly thought out. He had this overarching storyline for all three books, and then cut it up and divided it up in everything else. So we talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this during the show. I know we talked about it before the show. Eventually, we may come back, maybe even next year, and look at reading at least the second book and eventually the third one. Because if you're going to read the second one, you got to read the third one.
I would say that should be one show to finish it off because they blur so much.
Yes, they do. It would be very hard to do that. So,
is there talk of this becoming a movie eventually already, or?
As much buzz as apparently it got last year, I could definitely see Hollywood looking at this. I could definitely see this being a multi movie, deal. So because even though we talked about this, even though it's technically it all started from one Bob, they all have their own personalities. We have all these different personalities and all these different characters. Now, can you imagine casting someone and telling them, "Oh, by the way, you're going to play all the versions of Bob"?
You know what though, Andy Serkis could do it.
That would be.
He's a little too old though because Bob died when he was like 31.
I know, but you can make the change in the movie, right? Like it's.
Yeah.
It would all be CGI.
Or you exactly what you just said. Do it CGI because it's all VR anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
that would be interesting.
And then have the live. Then you would get that contrast. I don't know. Just throwing ideas out there because I could see Andy Serkis pulling that off big time, or that type of an actor.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. That would be really interesting because I thought the same thing. Like it's done very cinematic. It's very, it's done in a way so that you would have the scene build up to this point and then we switch to another character, and then we come back and finish that. So it's very much written like a movie would be played out. So, and I vaguely remember hearing someone say something about this book last year to me, and I don't remember who it was. And just, being really excited about it coming out. I really, like I said, I didn't realize how new the book was. I mean, it's barely a year old.
Yeah.
Well,
and I know it's won a lot of awards.
Because the third book just came out in August.
Oh yeah, no,
So
I would have been pissed.
Yeah, one in April and one in August. So clearly he wrote it sort of all at the same time, and then it just got broken up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you timed this one very well.
Oh yeah, because I would have been super pissed if I got to the first two books and be like, all right, where's the third? Where's the third?
Yeah, you wait.
Start direct messaging him every day. Where's the third book?
Exactly.
Dennis, where's the book?
He's sitting at some place where like all writers get together, and that's like all they bitch about,
God damn it, those
Fans.
Canadians.
Pardon?
Damn those Canadians, they won't leave me alone.
They're relentless, those jerks.
All I could do is hear them sharpening their skates. They're coming after me.
Oh Lord. No, there'd be a Texan down here waiting for the next one too. So, so final thoughts on the book. Ray.
Oh, it was so well written, but the thing that I liked about it the most was they got the perfect person to read that. Mm-hmm. If you had somebody else that couldn't inflect the way that he did and couldn't change the voice the way that he did, you could get lost in that book very easily. So I appreciate the combination of not just the story, but also the storyteller. So,
Chris, any final thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. Again, not the most techie person, so the science stuff over my head. But I liked that it wound up being a multiple point of view book, which those are my favorite because I feel like it completes the story more. And
as much of a single point it wasn't. It's just clones of Bob, but like Eugene keeps saying, they're all their own characters, and the further along it gets, the more developed they get. And I just really liked the story. I thought it was a really cool idea of what the future might look like. And Dennis is a really great writer, and it's a really fast paced story. And it's plot driven, and I thought it was really cool. And we're listening in the car, and the kids like it too. Yeah. Like they're swearing in it. But it's nothing that they haven't heard before.
Exactly, so. With a sass mouth for a mother. But yeah, I like reading. I like you, Jennifer. If I read it, like have it at the book, it would be really super hard for me to get into it. But listening to it really, really helps. Because it just keeps all the bobs in order, and it just it makes it a lot easier to get through all that heavy science stuff that I don't understand. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Jen, any final thoughts? You didn't get a chance to quite finish the book, so are you definitely planning on finishing it, or?
Yeah, I'll finish it, and I'll probably go on to read the rest of them. I thought it was a really neat concept. It was different from anything I've read before, which is hard to do after how many years of people writing sci-fi. But the idea that we don't need to take everything we need with us, and you can like make it as you go and replicate, and the idea of such an advanced AI, or implementing a human brain into a machine like that. It also like brings up some interesting questions about like how they're trying to accelerate life on planets or help these species along. How like did somebody do that with us? Like, did we have a being, like that's the God or whatever, so you think about things like that. Where did the universe start? Was it just some person that got stuck in a machine that wanted to like, say, hey, what would happen if I dropped some icebergs on this planet? And bunch of random molecules, see where it goes. So interesting, very interesting, makes you think. And it's, like she said, very fast paced story that keeps you moving.
Mm-hmm.
After I've listened to the entire series at least twice. I know I've listened to the first book multiple times, just for taking notes purposes and everything else. Yeah, I loved the book, and I think my final conclusion as to why I loved the book so much is because I identify with Bob so much. I like, okay, so at my work, I've been doing inventory, like I said at the beginning, and I have days where I just enjoy like going in, putting my headphones on, and not doing anything with anyone, like just literally being by myself and doing my own thing and being perfectly content, and getting a little annoyed whenever I do get interrupted. Yep. And yet I do have other days, like for example, I'm currently in the process of trying to get a new partner. My partner moved on to a different job downtown. So I'm currently without a partner. And I'm really missing her, not just because I don't have someone there to get my back for me. So while I'm doing, I can work on a big project and she can handle all the piddly stuff that comes up, or vice versa. Cause she's been working on a project and I've taken care of all this stuff for her. We talked a lot. Like, it was very, we'd get in the next morning. How was your evening? How was your weekend? And we talk, and, we talk about geeky things. And so, I understand both sides of that, of being able to work by myself, but also, still missing talking to other people that I enjoy talking to. Pretty much everything that they create is made with 3D printers, and it has become such a big part of my life. It's insane.
It's helped us.
Yeah. But, I mean, just the personalities, I the way that he handles things a lot of times are the way that, even though a lot of the new Bobs, when they come online, it talks about this, the new Bobs, a lot of them are very much, hey, I want to go on and do my own thing. But usually they're all pretty much, at least at the first mindset of, okay, well, what is it we have to do to get the job done? And let's get the job done. And then we can move on to the stuff. And that's really how I work. I'm like, okay, what's the job? Let's get the job done. And then I can move on to either stuff that I want to do or what the next job is. Yeah. So I identified with Bob so much, not just like, main Bob, like all of the other Bobs. I can see different facets of my personality coming out with different people and the way that I act in certain situations and stuff. So I just, so well written. I am so glad y'all, you recommended this book to the group to read, because this has become, quite honestly, one of my favorite books. The trilogy is one of my favorites. So,
just when you were saying how the different Bobs, and it reminded me something that I really loved about the book too, was every time the Bob comes online, he snaps back to conscious and he checks his code. And he's
his
like,
serial number, yeah.
Shit, I'm not me anymore.
Yeah.
And then they pop into the VR and they're like, nope, you know the rules. New name.
New name.
Shit.
Yep. Exactly.
All right, call me Lou for now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was gonna ask. We're running a little late, I won't quite ask the question. I'll just kind of throw it out there. Would anyone here consider being cryogenically frozen? Okay, Chris.
Maybe.
I would too if I had.
Trust me, if vampires existed, bite me. I'm immortal, baby. Whatever I need to take to not die, I'm on it.
She does not.
Gotcha.
If I'd be curious about the whole AI aspect of it, like integrating your consciousness into that type of thing. That would be intriguing, especially if you're close to death, because there's aspects of the book that we didn't talk about, which is like the vampire, or no, what was those things, the things that were infected, or no, that's when they get. Is that in the first book? See, I'm losing.
They all blend together.
I know.
I don't remember that, so probably not.
Okay, so yeah, when he starts talking about, I'm glad I'm not human right now, like those types of aspects, it's like, you know what, I would be okay with being a computer at that point.
Yeah, there's certain things that he talks about, and especially the later books where he's like, I don't miss that so much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Mosquito bites, getting cold, getting hot.
Yeah.
Being
hungry. Aches, pains, stuff like that. Yeah, I could do without that. So.
Yeah. But needing those sensations to
like
still
stretching
keep your
and
sanity.
doing, yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
just miss being. It's like he still needs to do those things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
To keep grounded. Yeah.
Well, all right then. Let's kind of move on to what else have you been reading? Has anyone been reading anything else recently of interest? What you got for us, Ray?
The new Dan Brown Origins.
Ooh.
Started reading that one.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dan Brown's kind of one of those, you either love him or hate him. Chris is definitely the hate him
I don't like him.
group. I enjoy his books because they are written for movies. Like, it is a very, it's multiple. It's kind of like this book in the way that it moves quickly, and there's definitely those. You can just tell it's written for a movie, but I'm not very far into it. And all I can hear is every time I hear Robert Langdon speak, every time I read him speaking, is Tom Hanks in my head. So,
Gotcha.
I'm right at the part where shit's about to get real. So,
Gotcha. Okay. Chris, have you been reading anything else?
Just listening to the second Bobiverse book, and then now I'm a third of the way.
About a third
of the way through the third book.
So I've been listening to it with her again, and so I'm on my second reading.
I have some books lined up. I borrowed the new Ernest Cline book, Armada, from a friend of mine. So I've read that. I have a stack on my nightstand of books that I want to get through, because I'm really trying not to buy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
No more new books till I read what I've got.
Gotcha. Yep.
We'll see how that goes. I don't know.
It is her birthday coming up. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Jennifer, have you been reading anything else?
I read The Restaurant at the End of the Universe after we read
okay.
Hitchhiker's
Was that?
So, huh?
How was it?
It was good. I wanted to keep going, but I had to start on this book. So, but yeah, it was a quick read. Really funny, just like the last one. Kind of big twist in it. Obviously, that's what he does. But yeah, it was good. I want to finish that series as well. So it's just too many stories to.
Yeah.
Remember.
Too many stories, not enough time.
I know.
So, like I said, I'm in that point of time still. I'm about to be out of him, about to be done with inventory and stuff. So I'm still reading a lot of stuff, and I've gone back and reread some stuff. I did go through and finish For We Are Many, which is the second book, and All These Worlds, which is the third. Because it was Halloween time, I thought I'd read something kind of scary, and I went back and reread. I've read it previously. Stephen King's Salem Lot. I love that book. It is very, very well done. And then I went back and finished the 3 books that have been out thus far from Andrew Mayne in the Jessica Blackwood series, Angel Killer, Name of the Devil, and Blackfall. And then he just released a new book not too long ago, like maybe last month, called The Naturalist. And it's a new series he started, and it's strictly a thriller type book, which is not normally always my cup of tea, but I really enjoyed it. I really like his writing, and I really enjoyed listening to it. So, if you're looking for something new that's just recently come out, check out The Naturalist by Andrew Mayne. So, with that said, you can find the show on YouTube at Epically Geeky. You can also find us at epicallygeeky.com. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Epically Geeky as well. Our next book that we'll be reading, and I'm so excited because this is another one of my series that I just absolutely adore. Our next book is going to be the first in the Wizard 2.0, our Magic 2.0 series, and it's called Off to Be the Wizard by Scott Meyer. I'm actually rereading the series for this right now. This is another one of those series. It's very lighthearted, and I love it. If I just need brain candy, as it were, this is one of the series I go to because I just love it. And then you can find us online doing our own individual thing from time to time. Ray, where can we find you online?
Not much right now. I've been working too much.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things that I'm going to be posting on Lake Life soon. As soon as they get done, I've got a couple skateboards that I'm actually staining and painting and having
Oh,
fun
cool.
with. So check that out probably in the coming 2 weeks because I'll have a bit of time off hopefully. So that'll be the Lake Life Artist on Instagram.
Cool. Chris, you're still not on, huh? No, she's happy about it too. Jennifer, where can we find you online?
Twitter and Instagram at Het's Gonna Be Me.
Very cool. And you can follow my individual wacky adventure online at Optimus Gene on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For everyone on the site, have a good night.